Hey, good morning. Today we're going to go take a trip to a place known as Leeland, Nevada. It was the first stop once in Nevada, once you cross the California line, on the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad. We're going to go up there and explore today, see if there's anything left. And it's about 100 miles north and west of Las Vegas. We'll head up there today. Got the trusty coffee for the road trip. I'm going to go take a look around, do a video shoot. Let's go explore.
Leeland is a former railway hamlet in the Amargosa Valley in Nye County, Nevada. It's the first stop on the Tonopah and Tidewater Railway just inside the state line of Nevada across from California. It was founded in 1906. That same year, a railway station was opened. Raw materials from the nearby Californian mine village of Lee was brought to Leeland to be transported by train. A stage line between the two settlements was established by a gentleman named C.E. Johnson. As Lee grew, Leeland grew with it. Leeland had 6 or 7 inhabitants in 1909 and grew to a maximum population of 25 by 1911. In November of 1911, a post office was established with George Railton as its postmaster. Leeland had its heyday in the next year and started to shrink afterwards because Lee's economy collapsed. Leeland's post office shut down in November of 1914. By then, the place was nothing more than a water stop on the railway, but it was gradually forgotten. Leeland's railway station continued to exist until 1931, when the station and other nearby facilities were burned down by someone who later committed suicide. Leeland also had a couple of murders happen in June of 1909. There's a newspaper article from a Tonopah newspaper that states the story as such. Leeland is a station on the Tidewater Railway in the Lee Mining District on the rim of the Death Valley. It had but 6 or 7 inhabitants when this murder took place. The article goes on to read that 2 Mexicans have been charged in this murder and will stand trial. It states that both Mexicans were employed there as a section hand, and when they received their monthly paychecks, it was their custom to get them cashed at a saloon belonging to Nelson and Dick Stillwell. Nelson and Stillwell were stabbed to death about midnight, and the next morning the 2 Mexicans were gone. I did some research to see how the trial ended, if it was in a conviction or otherwise, but I haven't found anything in the newspaper articles of that time. Francis Marion Smith was one of California's most successful entrepreneurs and mining tycoons. He owned and operated many borax mines in and around the area, including the Pacific Coast Borax Company, which was at the time one of the largest in the world. To bring the borax out of this remote region, he considered building a rail system. He had also hoped for extending the railroads towards Tonopah, Nevada, as during this time there was a great mining boom going on in the region, with gold and silver mines popping up all over the area. And so in July of 1904, Smith incorporated the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad Company. He began construction in November of 1905. The railroad reached Death Valley Junction, California by 1907, and in the same year the last spike was hammered into place at Gold Center, Nevada, which is just south of modern-day Beatty. The Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad was famous for being the last of 3 railroads built across the Death Valley region and outlasted them by over 30 years, providing
dedicated and reliable services to the desert residents.
The profitability of the railroad began to decline in 1913. Many of the mines in the area had stopped production and didn't have a need for the rail service. Earlier, the T&T had merged with the Bullfrog Goldfield Railroad, and in 1928, the Bullfrog Goldfield Railroad was abandoned and therefore severing the link with Goldfield and Tonopah, forcing the railroad to cut back its tracks to Beatty. The T&T tried to campaign tourism to Death Valley in an effort to stay alive. However, that did not work out that well. And abandonment filings with the Interstate Commerce Commission was applied by the T&T as early as 1938. However, many protesters were made by the local businesses that relied on T&T for their very existence. But the ICC eventually approved of the applications for abandonment by 1940. The railroad was laid in submission for a time in hopes of reopening to better traffic. But when the United States entered World War II in 1941, all of T&T's rails and equipment were scrapped and salvaged. That's it as far as the history of the railroad goes. Let's go searching and see what we can find left over in the old town site.
The foundations that I got circled here are what is actually existing there today. Could very well have been the foundations for the buildings that you see here in this photograph. That is said to be the old rail stop for Leeland. A couple of old rundown structures of some sort out here. Maybe some kind of a storage cellar or something. You can see that other truss right over there on the ground. As we walk around, we can see more of this debris, mainly all the metal, because that was the best way for them to store their goods. More debris and dump stuff over here. We're a little ways further from the rail bed than the rest of the things that I've seen here. That road that you see going up the center right there, that leads up to Lee, California and Lee, Nevada. We're going to head up that way pretty quick. So, only evidence of livelihood in this once rail town or rail stop is a bunch of debris left over and trash, where they probably just tossed this stuff right out their windows. Here's a little bit more pottery, some dishes broken. Hard to find anything intact after all these years, and they just used to throw it out here on the rocks and break it. It looks like a elbow for a water line, which could be where they may have had their pump and their well to feed the water over to the water tank. You don't see much in the way of ceramic, but here's a, oh, it looks like a teacup. So just a little bit of stuff around. Looking up that direction, it's looking kind of north and west. We're headed towards Beatty. You can see it's overgrown, but this is the rail bed that was once here. A couple of rail ties along the rail bed.
It's a little hard to tell from this photo, but this appeared to be parts of a stove.
Out in the distance behind me, the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad tried to get people to homestead this area. They actually started a ranch over there called the T&T Ranch. They had some experimental gardens that they had created out there. However, it didn't take too well. They never really got anybody to homestead out here. And then after the rail service stopped in the late 30s, there was no reason to be out here. You see those hills behind me? That's the area where Lee was created or founded.
There's some mining efforts going on up in there. They brought their ore down here to get shipped out to Southern California. This Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad was intended to go all the way to San Diego. It never made it there. It went into Ludlow, California, and then to the north it never made it to Tonopah. But it served the citizens of Rhyolite and the Armagosa Valley for quite some time, providing material and passengers. Nothing but the wind out here.
A little history on the farming in the area. In Armagosa Valley around Leeland, it's very suitable for agriculture, since enough groundwater that could be easily pumped to the surface by wells was available. In Leeland itself, employees of the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad grew vegetables and grains in their backyards on a small scale. The railroad company wanted to increase its profits and reasoned that if homesteaders would settle in Armagosa Valley, they would transport their products by train. Farms had already been established in some of the nearby places, like Ash Meadows and Pahrump Valley. In 1914 and 1915, officials of the railroad company visited the area to investigate the agricultural possibilities. In order to attract homesteaders, the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad created a 10-acre demonstration farm and dairy that showed agricultural possibilities of the area. The farm was named T&T Ranch, which was situated about 5.5 miles from and southeast of Leeland itself. However, the T&T Ranch did not attract any homesteaders. Potential settlers were discouraged by the Homestead Act that, among other things, required homesteaders to develop a surface water supply sufficient for the cultivation of their land. The T&T Ranch operated until the 1940s, when it was vacated due to the fact that Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad stopped being used. The farms were not very successful during that period of time. However, the farming business in Armagosa Valley outside of the Ash Meadows took off a decade after the railroad was closed. T&T Ranch remained abandoned until 1946. And then Gordon and Billy Bettles acquired it. They ran the demonstration farm until 1964. As I understand, there's still a group that operates this ranch. The focus of the farm has evolved into producing organic eggs, which means their chickens and ducks are fed with 100% organic, soy-free, corn-free feed. They claim the ducks and chickens are orchard raised.
Well, this concludes my presentation of Leeland, Nevada. Had a good time going out there. I always like to go out to these locations and kind of get a sense for what it must have been like over 100 years ago out in these remote locations. And hopefully I've inspired some of you to go out and do some exploring in and around your area. Get outside and really enjoy the scenery. I had a lot of fun out there looking around. You never really know what you're going to get until you show up to those sites. Some sites are fantastic with a lot of relics. Other sites are not so much. But hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to see some more of this type of content, please subscribe to my channel and look at the other videos I've done, and I plan to do many more in the future. Thanks for watching.